A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got an excellent podcast for you. Joining me in segment number 2, we've got Nick Lorensen aboard. He does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at all of these teams that deserve a little bit more love than what they get. We're going to be chatting with them about conference tournaments now being in our lives. On top of that, his team, Queens NC, is playing an opening night of these conference tournaments. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Atlantic Sun tournament, his team's matchup over there with Florida Gulf Coast, and so much more, along with how he takes a look at games involving a team like his and Queens that plays super up-tempo against a super slow team like we've got with Florida Gulf Coast. So we're going to be diving in on that and so much more in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this College Basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters M, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Sunday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
One of your best under teams in all of college basketball, well, they continued at unders for you. Rutgers. They are now 20 unders to just 9 overs this year, as Nebraska, they take them down by a count of 67-56. And, for Nebraska, they've been a pretty good against the spread team as well. But for Rutgers, 4 of 25 from three-point range. This was a total I got seen from like 135 to 141. I have absolutely no idea why, but for Nebraska, you were able to get 14 points in this one out of Jeremiah Williams, and that was a lone form of offense that you got. Meanwhile, Casey Shomanaga, 18 points, one very dramatic three in this one. I believe it was a 4-point play. Meanwhile, for Nebraska, they win the rebound battle by kind of 44-40 as you had Juwan Gary along Josiah Alec combined for 23 rebounds. Maris has also been very kind to you with regards to the under, and for Maris, they do fall in this one to Iona, this by a count of 71-64. Closing total in this one was more in that realm of about 134.5. So in a lot of places, you did have an under in this one. 18 unders, 8 overs, and a push thus far this season for Maris to the total. But for Iona, they get this done because they go 12 of 24 from three-point range. I mean, they were just hot in this game. You had Jeremiah Quigley throwing their 18 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. Meanwhile, 21 big points out of Joel Brown, who's become much more of a willing scorer here without Greg Gecko Gordon in the fold. Meanwhile, for Maris, they do go themselves about 7 of 22 from three-point range with Javon Cooley going 4 of 6 from distance. That means that the rest of the team went a nice hearty 3 of 16 from three-point range. And for Maris, here's what costed them in this one. They go 9 of 19 at the free throw line. So a little bit of a brutal one out there. And East Carolina, they've also been a really good team to the under for you. 19 unders to 9 overs, but they also overwhelmed 84-69 North Texas. They're able to get it done as North Texas goes 13 of 28 from three-point range. And for East Carolina, they shoot north of 50% from the floor, and they win the turnover battle 9-5. But the battle that they did not win was the battle on the glass. North Texas wins the rebound battle by a count of 36-19 as for North Texas, you also had a pair of guys score 18 points apiece in Jason Edwards along with Reuben Jones, so they were able to make quick work of that. Meanwhile, our DK Network Reddit pick unfortunately did not come through. I had the over in Oral Roberts versus UMKC, and Oral Roberts, for the 24th time in their last 26 games against D1 foes, they allowed north of 70 points. Problem is, they were held to 54 points in this one, 71-54. Oral Roberts falls, and for Oral Roberts, it's been a relatively rough year against the spread for them as Oral Roberts, they now fall to against the spread 11-15. Meanwhile, for UMKC, they absolutely clean up the glass, winning that battle 37-26. And for Oral Roberts, 14 turnovers in this game, and they go just a hearty 8 of 28 from three-point range. So just not a good showing from them, and we will look to do better with our write-up today. And, well, Maryland, they should be looking to do better as well, because this Maryland team was a 8.5 to a 9-point favorite. I am not sure why, and they lose outright to Indiana by a count of 83-78. This after Maryland had a lead of 10 points at the half, and there was a point in the second half where they were up 14 points. Jameer Young, he did his part with 22 points, and Maryland actually shoots 9 of 24 from 3, but they allow Indiana to shoot 56.5% from the floor, 43.5% from three-point range. And for Maryland, they lose the rebound battle by a count of 32-26 as you had Mackenzie Mbakpo be able to supply the team with 24 points, Khalil Ware 15 rebounds of his own. So Indiana, they're able to go out there, they're able to get the win. And now for Maryland, 12-18 against the spread for them thus far this season. Meanwhile, UConn, they are much better than that against the spread, as they were really the lone-ranked team that was in action on Sunday, and they completely lambasted Seton Hall. 91-61 the final. UConn now 18-11 against the spread, despite having to lay big numbers with them, as for UConn, they go just 6 of 18 from three-point range, but controlled things down low. They were able to shoot from two-point range 27 out of 41, and additionally, they were able to win the turnover battle by a count of 11-5. They win the rebound battle 35-26 with Donovan Clingan, Giant of the Earth, supplying 19 points, 11 boards, 5 blocks. So UConn was able to do a very solid job on that front. And if you're looking at some of the top against the spread teams that were playing on Sunday out there in the Metro Atlantic, St. Peter's goes to now 17-9 against the spread, as our good friend the Peacocks, they just absolutely took it to Manhattan. 89-57 the final. For St. Peter's, they went 10 of 15 from three-point range, just for one of the lesser three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball. Just everyone had it working for St. Peter's, as 4 of your 5 starters were able to score double figures. But how about Latrell Reed? 9 rebounds, 17 assists, and 15 points out of him. Meanwhile, for Manhattan, they were able to do an okay job of being able to play even up with regards to turnover battle, but they lost the rebound battle 44-19. So that was an issue. Siena, they have been an issue if you've been betting on them. They're now 11-19 against the spread. They fall to Quinnipiac 71-57, though they did get a cover in this one. They were an 18.5 point underdog, and for Quinnipiac, they go just 6 of 21 from three-point range. So Matt Blahnic was able to supply the team with 26 points. Meanwhile, for Siena, they go 7 of 21 from three-point range, and they do lose the turnover battle 17-12, but they do just enough to be able to get the cover in this one. And then Niagara, they've been a really good cover team away from home. At home, not so much a case, and that was the case once again on Sunday, as Niagara, they lose to Mount St. Mary's by a count of 91-72. A Mount St. Mary's team that is now 12-18 against the spread, as for the Mount, they go 6 of 13 from three-point range. And off the bench, Terrell Art Jr. was able to supply the team with 14 points, 5 rebounds, while Niagara went 12 of 21 at the free throw line. Auyabeng Menzo was able to give the team 19 points, but past that, not a lot doing for them, and not a lot doing if you're a fan of Colorado late in this game. Colorado scores just 3 points in the final 6:15 in this one. They were in good shape to absolutely romp Stanford, be able to cover that 12 as they were up 20 at the time, but that kills the over and that kills the spread. Colorado wins by a count of 81-71. Looked really good before going ice cold, but Colorado overall, they go 11 of 25 from three-point range, while Stanford, they go just 7 of 28 from 3. The way that Stanford covers this game, though, they won the turnover battle, as Colorado turns the ball over 12 times, Stanford just 8 times, and for Stanford, they did have Maximine Radon be able to supply 26 points, 12 rebounds. So Stanford, they improved 13-15 against the spread, and Colorado, they're now 13-16 against the spread, and then one of the nuttiest games that you're going to find all season long. Memphis, they win and cover against UAB 106-87. This after Memphis at one point was down north of 20 points. I think that the deficit had gotten as high as 22. They were down 61-39 as UAB had scored 61 points in this game through the first, I would say, about 18 and a half or so minutes. And then they scored a whopping 27 points for the final 21 plus minutes. Just a complete and utter reversal in this one. Davy Jones was able to supply 32 points, 9 rebounds. Nequan Tomlin, he had 28 points. And for UAB, they allow Memphis to go 8 of 20 from three-point range and 28 of 36 at the free throw line, and UAB lost the turnover battle 18-9. So that was rough for them, and this was also rough for Evansville. They get lambasted by Belmont by a count of 83-66. For Evansville, they actually got up in this game quite early on, and then from there it was just all about Belmont being able to take over the game, as Jacoby Gillespie was able to supply the team with 18 points. But the good news for Evansville, they are not our good friend Michigan. Michigan, one of the worst cover teams in all of college basketball this season. They get absolutely destroyed by Ohio State, 84-61, though I will say, shout out at the end of the game for the made 3 that was able to push this game over the total, as Cooper Smith, in complete garbage time from like 30 feet, he hoists one up and that was able to get you the over, but For Michigan, this team is now 8-22 against the spread. Stephen F. Austin, Pacific Old Dominion are the lone three teams in college basketball with a worse cover rate than Michigan. For Michigan, just a lifeless, sad effort. Ohio State, they shoot north of 56% from the floor. They go 25 of 31 at the free throw line. And Michigan, they lose the turnover battle 18-16. They lose the turnover battle. He did have 19 points out of Doug McDaniel, so if he was still suspended, just imagine how bad this would have been, but not a great effort there. And then out there in the Missouri Valley Conference, the regular season goes to Indiana State. No cover, but they're able to take down Murray State by a count of 89-77 as our good friend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Robbie Avila, he was able to have himself a nice performance, 23 points, 4 assists, so it was the double-double of Ryan Conway with 24 points, 12 rebounds, and deserves the show in this one. Meanwhile, Southern Illinois, they've been a good cover team for you all season long. Not so much on Sunday, though. They fall to Northern Iowa on their home floor by a count of 82-70. They're now 18-11-1 against the spread. As for Northern Iowa, they go 7 of 16 from three-point range, while for Southern Illinois, they did have 24 points, 7 boards out of Xavier Johnson, but other than Troy D'Amico, he really didn't have a lot of support around him, so that was a little bit rough on that front end. If you're looking for a team that has been pretty harebrained with regards to the totals, how about Southern Illinois? With that, they're now 19 overs and 11 unders, while Belmont and Evansville, they have both played north of 60% of their games to the under with the game that I was alluding to before, but you also did see a big one between Drake and Bradley, and Drake, they're able to get the cover. This by a count of 74-66. They were laying 4.5 points, and Tucker DeVries just continues to be so amazing. He was able to put up 29 points. Now, that did come on 20 shots, but threw in there 4 steals, 6 rebounds for a Drake team that they play even up on the glass 25-25, but they win the turnover battle 16-8. As for Bradley, he just had a few too many turnovers out of Duke Dean and Connor Hickman. They combined for 7 turnovers and 2 assists along 21 points. And for Drake, they go from 3-point range, just 5 of 21 in this one, but 25 out of 26 at the free throw line. That won and covered them the game. And if you are looking at college basketball right now, we have been noticing things being quite overwhelming thus far this season. 2,580 overs, 2,460 unders. That's a 51.2% hit rate to the over, while home underdogs, they're hitting at just 48.9%. 691, 723, and 23 against the spread. If you're looking at the last 7 days in college basketball, for home underdogs, it's been still relatively rough, 46, 54, and 2 against the spread. While overs, they certainly are overwhelming. 179 overs to 155 unders and a few pushes along the way. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Sunday. Now, let's take a look at some conference tournament action, some mid-majors, and what we're all going to be getting on Monday with Nick Lorensen. He is a part of that Queens NC coaching staff, so certainly we're going to be bringing that up, and so much more with regards to conference tournament season right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the McNeese Family Podcast. We're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by this man as Nick Lorensen. He does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this great game of college basketball that we all know and love. I know that he is hard at work deciphering what is a very, very insane and fun sport to try to decipher. He's doing great work as well over on the Queens NC coaching staff, which they're going to be getting conference tournaments started off on Monday. That's a lot of fun. We're going to be taking a look at their matchup, and to be able to follow our good friend Nick on Twitter/X, as at the letter N, last name Lorensen, spelled Lorensen, sports all together. And Nick, it is always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, Greg. Yeah, I'm so excited. It's going to be a super awesome week of college basketball. Conference tournaments are back. Monday, we have 2 games in the A-Sun, 2 neutral site games. You know, I make the joke quite often. I don't know how many people will be at these games. You know, Greg mentioned I'm on Queen's staff, up on air quite often. I'd be shocked if there's over 30 people at our game at Stetson on Monday. But that also means we have conference tournaments back, and it's the best time of the year. Every single game means an insane amount. It's a very important time of year, and it's the best time of year. I'm super excited.
Yep, I am super excited as well. And just how are you guys going about preparing for this conference tournament run that you've got out there in the LAXM? Because as we know, Queens is a little bit of a transitionary school. You guys, if you win the LAXM tournament, unfortunately, are not going to be able to make the NCAA tournament, which is a rule that I think needs to be fixed. We remember Bellarmine in year number 2 in their Atlantic Sun tenure. They were able to actually win this entire tournament, and they were barred from the NCAA tournament. So how are you guys going about things? Is it like a role of spoiler? Is it just a capper to the season? How are you going about just preparing for this ASUN tournament?
Yeah, we're just preparing it like it's any other game. I mean, not taking anything too seriously. Coming into the season, this was one of our goals: win the regular season title in the ASUN, win the conference tournament title in the ASUN, and win the CBI. We can't make the CBI anymore because we didn't finish over 500. There's no way that we finished over 500. But we're going to play like it's another game. It's going to be really interesting because we played FGCU a week from the day we're recording this, 9 days apart from the games between each other. We're dominating them in the first half, and we kind of struggled defensively out of the gates in the second half and ended up dropping that game. But we have that advantage there where we play them recently, so we know our team should be fresh and they should know what they have to do to beat them this time. They've already beat them once. And then we play a Stetson team who we played earlier in that week, so it will be, about 11 days apart, 10 days apart from the last time we played this Hatters team. It didn't go all too well in Charlotte, but we won Edmonds Arena just 10 days ago from if that game's to happen on Tuesday. So we have a nice advantage there that we've played these teams recently. It can also be an advantage to the other teams, but I like the psyche of our guys, and hopefully that'll be good, and we can make a little run out of it. We've only ever won one postseason D1 game in program history, so we're hoping to make it a couple more.
Absolutely, and I do think that it is so intriguing to take a look at that game between you and Florida Gulf Coast because it is sort of clashing styles. As we know, Florida Gulf Coast, a little bit more of a slower tempo, more controlled team, while you guys over at Queens NC, you've been one of the more up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. And we do find a lot of that in the Atlantic Sun. And just how do you go about playing these teams that they do play a relatively different tempo than you? Is it a case where you try to maybe adjust your game a little bit, or are you just saying, you know what, we're going to throw our fastball, we are going to continue to play super-duper fast and see if the other team can catch up?
So it actually helps the faster team, I think. It helps the faster team than the slower team because, the faster team's able to catch their breath as the slower team. They got to run the court now. They got to run the court now. It makes them go more to flow instead of running sets. And for a team like FGCU, they run sets almost every single time down the court. So that's really going to get in their head. They're going to be throwing up. It's more easy for the slow team to throw up junk in that kind of situation because the fast team's used to running that kind of basketball. So I think it's good for us. We get to throw our fastball. We get to do what we want to do, while FGCU might have to do some random cuts and screens and all that jazz all over the time. So, I mean, it was 2 tough games the first 2 times. It's going to be really difficult to figure out. I mean, I usually have a solid feel who's going to win the third game. It's going to come down to the post, in my opinion. With Keyshawn Kelman, he didn't post up all that much against us on last Saturday. It's going to be interesting to see how he's going to do that against BJ McLaurin, who's going to own that big man advantage down low.
Yep, it is going to be. As joining me on the show, we do have Nick Lorensen, who does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness. He is joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Nick, when it comes to just gauging the landscape of mid-major basketball as well, we are going to be seeing many conferences like the Atlantic Sun that are going to be starting up their conference tournaments. And just in terms of the conference tournaments that you want to see the most, which ones are really catching your eye that you think that there might be some chaos and there might be just some big giant upsets and a lot of excitement in general?
Yeah, I mean, every year the Horizon League, that's one of the ones that starts the opening week, is always crazy. There's upsets galore. The 1 seed never wins it. Another one like that's the MAC. I mean, it's probably going to be a 16 seed. Whoever wins that league will probably end up being a 16 seed. But it's really anyone's game. Fairfield, Quinnipiac have been up back and forth at the top. Iona seemingly wins it every year. There's been no real one dominant team in that league. But then you also have a league like the Ivy League, who just has 3 games in their conference tournament, but you have 3 really, really, really good teams who I think should be at-large teams regardless, with Cornell, Princeton, Yale, and then you have a Brown team who's making their first ever Ivy League tournament. The Ivy League tournament's been around almost 10 years at this point, but Brown's never made it. It's their chance to make a statement, make their first Ivy League tournament. That'll be really interesting to see what happens there. You have the Patriot League. Colgate's been at the top of the league once again, but there's a chance that one of these teams could randomly knock them off. It's been a really weird year in that league. Same with the NEC. I'm just going on league for league now. NEC, you have Lemoyne who's hosting a home game in the conference tournament as a 4-seed transitioning team. They really didn't return anyone from last year, although they weren't all that good at the D2 level. But that's up for grabs. Central Connecticut ended up getting the 1 seed on Saturday. It looked like Merrimack was going to get it the whole entire way. So that's going to be really interesting. The Valley's going to be great. You're going to have a title game more than likely between Indiana State and Drake, a rubber match between the two. The two teams have been amazing all season. There's a bit of the NCAA tournament on the line, obviously. OVC, we have the first final there on Saturday. That'll be a lot of fun. Big Sky's really intriguing. There's been a couple teams that have been surging up in that league. It will be fun to see McNeese in the Southland hopefully clinch it on their home court, although every other team's at a neutral site there. Big South, I feel like someone could cause some havoc. Either they could cause havoc or High Point could be making a statement to the league. This is going to be our league for the next couple of years until they want to make the move that they want to make wherever they're going to. But Greg, I'm honestly excited for every mid-major conference tournament because, like I mentioned earlier, it's wire-to-wire basketball. Every game means a crap ton more, and there's players playing their last game. Everything's on the line for these guys. This is where you make your statement these couple of weeks in March.
Yep, it certainly is where you make your statement, and I do think that it is always a different tenor when it comes to taking a look at March basketball, when it comes to taking a look at these teams that are trying to make the NCAA tournament, that are trying to be able to make these runs, and are there characteristics of teams that you trust a little bit more / less in March? Because I do think that experience, it really just does mean more this time of year, and on top of that, I do think that defense is just a little bit more paramount this time of year as well, because I noticed that with regards to all these conference tournaments, the NCAA tournament as well, there's just fewer possessions. Teams start to sort of clench up a little bit more, for lack of a better term, and I do think that that leads to a little bit more of an edge to these teams that they do play a little bit more of a defensive-oriented style of basketball.
Yeah, I agree with both those. Experience and strong defense definitely carry a lot this month. The defense wins championships, first of all. Experience helps you win games down the line, but you have leaders. So those are two huge things. I've been saying it for quite a while. I believe I mentioned it a couple times on this podcast. Two other things I really look at, and this is more of a NCAA tournament thing, not a conference tournament thing, is star player. If you have a star player as a lower seed, you have a chance to knock off a higher seed. And with that, you play an interesting style of basketball. If you play an interesting style of basketball, something that a team really hasn't seen in their league, that can help and that can be to your advantage. Those are the four main things. When conference tournaments happen, you don't need to exactly have those four things. Experience is definitely the number one thing that really helps when it comes down to these late games close in the conference tournament. But it's really anything can happen for these next 2 weeks.
Oh, it's so much fun to be able to take a look at, and everyone loves the NCAA tournament, but I think a lot of people sleep on just how much fun and how much excitement there are in these conference tournaments, as well as Nick Lorensen. He does such tremendous work over at Mid-Major Madness. He's joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Nick, obviously from being on a site called Mid-Major Madness, you take a look at these mid-major teams, the teams that go a little bit less served, but how do you take a look at some of these power conference teams as well coming into the NCAA tournament? Because obviously when it comes to the NCAA tournament, it's few and far between when we do see these mid-majors make the Final Four. So we were in for a treat when Florida Atlantic and San Diego State were able to make their runs a season ago. But are there a few teams in particular that you take a look at and you just like what you're seeing? Because it goes along with what I was talking about a little bit before, dressing in these defense-oriented teams. Like I look at Houston, I look at UConn, and I really trust in them. While a team like Kentucky, for instance, even though they're scoring a bunch of points, they're not a team that I necessarily want to be hitching my wagon to in March.
Yeah, I fully agree. You have Houston with that defense, and they've been able to make runs the last couple of years. They've been playing strong talent over these last couple of months. Is this the time they get over the hump? You have Purdue. Zach Edey's been around for a long time. This team's a little bit more experienced, I believe, than the last couple of years. Are they able to get over the hump for not only Purdue, but for the Big Ten, who's really struggled over these last couple of years? You have an Auburn team. The SEC's been great this year. You mentioned Kentucky. I think Auburn's honestly the team in the SEC that's set up for the most success. Either them or Tennessee. The only thing about Tennessee is they have a couple players who haven't been in the NCAA tournament before, where I think that's a little bit more of a gray area. So that's why I really like this Auburn team, because they have NCAA tournament experience and they have a really, really solid bunch led by a really, really solid head coach. I mean, those are the couple teams I'm really looking forward to. It's been interesting because the last couple years, teams have been changing at the top all year, where this year it's kind of been Houston, UConn, and Purdue all year round. So I wouldn't be shocked if two of those three end up making it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either. And I do think that there's going to be so much intrigue with what we're going to be getting in March, because it does feel like there are a few teams that are starting to separate themselves with Purdue, UConn, also Houston, but there's a big crop of teams behind them that I do think are going to be able to make runs, as Nick Lorensen, who does great work over at Mid-Major Madness, is joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops. And Nick, I do want to address this as well. We have seen some of these mid-majors that it looked like they were a good footing for an at-large bid suffer some losses recently. Like, I still think that Dayton is going to be in good position, but that loss against Loyola Chicago a few days ago, that hurt them. Grand Canyon, obviously, a week ago, losing those 2 games out there in the great state of Texas, that was very much a hamperance for them. But who are some teams that could be able to make a at-large bid for the NCAA tournament that are out there in a mid-major conference that we should be watching their conference tournaments this week, because there might be threats of a bid thief or two?
It's a lot lower than it really has been the last couple of years. You mentioned Dayton. Dayton is pretty much the A-10's only chance at a 2-bid league. Indiana State was on that radar for quite a while. Maybe they've fallen off. Maybe they haven't. That could be a 2-bid league if Drake's able to pull something off or someone else is able to pull something off. I don't know about Grand Canyon, because those 2 losses could really hurt them. But that's a really good team. You could have a bid thief in the WCC. We're going to have St. Mary's and Gonzaga. I don't know why Gonzaga's on the bubble. I think that they should be more safely in the field. But you could have a San Francisco or a Santa Clara pull off a shocker, because, St. Mary's has been running through everyone. But 2 through 9, the rest of the league's really been up for grabs. So I wouldn't be shocked if one of those 2 teams ended up making it to the final, maybe knocking off St. Mary's. And then in the Mountain West, we have 6 teams that could get at-large bids still in that league. I wouldn't be shocked if UNLV made a little run. Wyoming has an interesting bunch. I don't know if they have it in them, but I wouldn't be shocked if they knock off a team or 2. It's a down year for these mid-majors with at-large bids. There's a lot of really good mid-majors, though. If they make the NCAA tournament, they can make some noise that are already at the top of their league, but it sucks because it's already so there's not much wiggle room for these teams.
No, there really is not, but there's always room for you on this podcast, Nick, because you do such a good job evaluating this game that we all know and love. I know that you're going to do everything possible to get Queens NC that title out there in the Atlantic Sun. I know that you guys are working very, very hard, and we are in for just the best basketball of the year. So let the good people at home know it's all on tap for you, and how people are able to follow all of your work on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, follow me along on Twitter or X at mid_madness and at Lorensen Sports. But it's going to be a fun 2 weeks. And on Mid-Major Madness, I'll be locked in on these conference tournaments. I'm going to try to go to the Big South. If we don't make a run in the A-Sun tournament, I'll be at the first game of March Madness at the A-Sun tournament. I'll be at the CAA tournament. I'll be at the Ivy League Finals. I'll be at the first round and second round of the NCAA tournament. I'll be at the Final Four. So I have a lot of live basketball live in my future. And I got to grind out some work for the rest of the night for our game on Monday. Get some work done on FGCU, hopefully get started on Stetson not soon after, and maybe a semifinal team. So it's the best 2 weeks of the year. There's nothing better than conference tournament basketball. Every game is so important. Every game is so intense. Everything's on the line.
It is all on the line, but a man that always delivers when it's all on the line, that would be Nick. He does such a good job taking a look at this great game that we all know and love, and loves great insight. So big thanks to Nick Lorensen for joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. They give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Craig Hoops Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to be joined by Nick Lorensen. He does such good work over at Mid-Major Madness, taking a look at this great game of basketball that we all know and love doing an amazing job taking a look at these mid-major teams, and hopefully Queens NC is able to make them proud on Monday and moving forward. It is always good to have them aboard. Big thanks to Nick for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Monday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at GNN_D1, and we are going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order. This is where we go with the games in the bigger conferences first. This is going to be like the ACC, the Big Sky, the Big 12. I think that's about it. And then everything else like the Atlantic Sun, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Southland schools of these conferences, those are going to be at the bottom. So let's get things started with 881, 882 on the card. It is Duke. They hit the road. They're facing off against NC State. And NC State is a 5 to a 6-point underdog with your total 148. I did set my line at 5.5. Opener on this game was 6, and at 6, I'm going to be willing to take the points with NC State. And personally, I'd rather take 6 rather than lay 5. This has been a Duke unit that has been very good all season long, especially with being able to hit the road. Duke is a top 20 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they're actually top 8 in terms of points scored in a road/neutral court environment, and they should be able to control the glass in this one, as you've got an NC State team that's well outside the top 175 with regards to rebound rate. Mark Mitchell, Kyle Filipowski, these two guys combined for about 14.5 rebounds per game. Filipowski, 3 assists, block and a half, shooting 35% per 3 with 17 points per contest. He has been magnificent, and for this Duke team, among their top 6 scorers, all but one of them shooting at least 35% from 3-point range. Lone exception is Mark Mitchell, who really doesn't pop a lot of threes, so you're in good hands there. And for Duke, they've done a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. Top 20 team in all of college basketball with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis, but for NC State, that's also been a forte of theirs. NC State is well outside the top 100 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but they do maximize their possessions, 10th in the country with regards to fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They're going to have a little bit of a tough time getting off threes against Duke. Duke is allowing teams to shoot 31.9% from 3. That is 67th in all of college basketball, but DJ Turner-Horn has been able to shoot north of 40% from 3-point range, 15 plus points per contest out of him, and this compares to an NC State team that is 267th in the country, but NC State, they allow opponents to shoot 37.3% from 3 away from home, only about 33.3% from 3 at home, and when it comes to this NC State team, the backcourt has been relatively solid, with Michael O'Connell giving you an assist to turnover ratio of 3. Though you don't have a lot of shooting outside that, you do have a 35% shooter, and Jaden Taylor has been able to give you about 12 points per contest. Really, the lone guy that gives you rebounding on this team has been Mohamed Diarra. 6.5 boards, 5.5 points, does shoot 35% from 3, but he doesn't really take a lot of triples. But this has been an NC State team that, by committee, has done a nice job being able to take care of the ball. And for NC State, the offense has really been able to get going as well. This bunch has been able to get to at least 70 points in 6 out of their last 7 games, and they have a lot of at least 70 points in every one of them. They're playing very harebrained. Meanwhile, for Duke, the defense, a top 25 unit in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. It's really been rolling. Ever since that loss to North Carolina to begin February, this team in their last 8 games, they've given up 70 points or fewer instead of them. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. Duke has been very good with their offense, and I do think that NC State, with the way that they value the ball, they are going to be able to get some scoring in this one. So I did set my total 151.5, and I do think that this game is close enough for late game fouling. So I'm going to be taking a look at the over, and with NC State, 6 or more, going to be willing to take the points with them. 883, 884 on the betting board. Northern Arizona is going to be playing us to Northern Colorado. Northern Colorado, a 3.5 to a 4-point favorite with your total 155 to 155.5. Made Northern Colorado the 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this number with Northern Colorado. Defense has been abysmal, 297th in all of college basketball with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, outside the top 300 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but the offense has been magnificent. They are 62nd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, but if you look at them just in their road and neutral court games, they have been a top 50 team with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. They don't take too much of a drop-off when they're away from home, and they face off against the Northern Arizona team that, while they are a top 150 unit in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, that's about all that they're doing well right now. This Northern Arizona team well outside the top 250 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and I do think that they're going to get outgunned on the glass, as well as they were supposed to have Carson Taupe be their top rebounder, really be able to give this team some stability, has not played all season long. So Carson Basham, the transfer that comes in for Pepperdine, has really been the lone guy to be able to give you north of 5.5 rebounds per game. Northern Colorado, they're pretty solid at about 175th in the country country with regards to rebound rate. Northern Arizona, they're checking in 332nd. You've had Oakland Fort be able to give this team a little bit of scoring. He's been able to throw in there about 9 to 10 points per contest. Is a halfway decent shooter, so they should be able to exploit a defense that really has been giving it up from the outside all season long. But even with them giving it up a little bit from the outside, I just don't think that there's a pathway to victory for a unit that has to rely upon Liam Lloyd to really get their offense going. He's been able to give the team about 3.5 assists per contest. Dude like Trent McLaughlin is 16.5 points per game, but Northern Colorado has the best player out there on the floor. That'd be St. Thomas. 4 assists, 10 boards, 20 points, shoots 34% from 3 for a bunch that shoots about 36% from 3 overall. And then DeJure Reeves along with Jerron Riley. These guys, they combine for about 26 points per contest, with Riley doling out about 5 assists to 2 or less turnovers per game. With Reeves, he shoots 37% from 3. Riley in that neighborhood as well. Northern Colorado, just a very good machine in terms of being able to generate offense. And they go up against a Northern Arizona unit that has allowed at least 83 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Northern Colorado bunch that they themselves have allowed at least 75 in 4 of their last 5 games, but they've gotten to at least 76 points in all these games as well. So I do think that you get a high-scoring affair. Did set my total of 155. Was seeing before some 154s, and at a 154, 154.5, looking at the over, and with Northern Colorado, did set them as a 5-point favorite, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 4 here. 885, 886 is the DK Network right pick, as Weber State is to face off against Montana State, and Montana State is a home underdog of 2.5 to 3 points. Totals between 144 and 144.5. I did make Weber State the 3.5 point favorite, so 3 is the max. I'm going to be willing to lay, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. But right up here is going to be on this total under. I did set my total at a 139.5. Weber State 328th in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions brain. Much of the reason why they play so slowly is that they've got a very thin rotation. They've only got 7 different guys that see north of 8.5 minutes per game. And Dylan Jones, it's all about keeping up with this Jones. He has been incredible. 20.5 points, 10.5 rebounds, north of 5 assists, 1.9 steals per game. He does it all for a Weber State team that is 65th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. So they've been relatively effective there. Steve Verplanken, Blaze Strat, they combine for about 23 points per contest. With Verplanken, he does shoot about 38.5% from 3-point range, but with this Weber State team, they do take quite a bit of a drop-off when they're away from home. When they're away from home, they have been scoring about 12.6 points fewer per 100 possessions than when they are at home. And this Montana State team has done a nice job of being able to guard the 3-point line. Weber State, they're in the top 130 nationally in terms of percentage of points that come from 3-point range. Montana State at home, they allow you to shoot just 29.1% from 3. That is 42nd in all of college basketball, and they're 53rd in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Much of this thanks to the fact that you've got Robert Ford on your team, as he's able to be a dominator himself, as he's been able to supply this Montana State team with 7.5 boards, 15 points, nearly 3 steals and 3 assists per game while shooting north of 40% from 3. And part of what does lend you to the under in this spot as well is that both of these guys, in Ford and Jones, they lead their team in reboundings, and especially in the case of Ford being just 6 feet tall, doesn't have a lot of height to be able to grab those second chances. Both of these teams, 2 of the worst in all of college basketball being able to get an offensive rebound. Montana State, they rebound about 18.6% of their misses. That is 357th in all of college basketball in a road/neutral court environment. For Weber State, they grab 20% of their misses. That's 335th in all of college basketball. Now, for Brandon Walker, along with Brian Goraki, they've been solid for Montana State, both giving you about 13.5 points, between 4 and 4.5 rebounds per game. So they've been able to deliver for this unit. And I do think that Weber State, in the end, is going to be able to pull it out. They're a very top-heavy team, but they've been able to get about 10 points per contest out of Dyson Kohler, who's been able to shoot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. And just flat out with this Weber State team, they do an okay job on defense. They're in the top 175 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Has been a little bit touch and go for them recently, but they do go up against a Montana State unit that, credit where credit is due, they have now given up 67 points of fear in 3 of their last 4 games. They played that harebrained overtime game against Eastern Washington, but I do flat out think that Jones is going to be the best player out there on the floor. I do think that Weber State just has a little bit more by way of 3-point shooting, though. Both of these teams, I do think, step up to the plate with their defense. My right-up pick, that is going to be on the under, and with Weber State willing to lay up to 3 with them. 887, 888 on the betting board. Idaho State is ready to face off against Montana. Montana is a favorite of 8 points with your total 141 to 141.5. With Montana, I did set them as a favorite of 6.5 points. So here at the 8, I'm going to be willing to take those points. Idaho State has been rough in terms of their defensive efficiency. If you look at the raw points allowed of 69.9 points, you're probably thinking, hey, not too terrible of a defense, but for Idaho State, it has been much more rough than that. I mean, Montana's hardly allowing north of 70 points per contest as well, but they've also been absolutely putrid in terms of their defense. Both of these teams well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. For Idaho State, 321st in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but actually goes downward a little bit on the road, 35.2% away from home, 37.7% from distance at home. And this Montana team, they are 308th in the country in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that does go down to 32.4% when they're at home as well. So they've been able to do a little bit better job when they have been at home, and this Montana unit, they certainly have been one of the better units in all of college basketball with regards to being able to just generate offense. Montana, in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they're a top 65 unit in all of college basketball, while for Idaho State, has been very much lacking, to say the least. Idaho State is checking in 168th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, and Braden Parker has been relatively solid for this team. He's been able to supply about 15 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range, while being able to haul in their 6 rebounds per contest. And then Malik Arrington gives you 5 assists, less than 2.5 turnovers per game. Neither of these teams is going to go out there and is really going to generate a ton of steals. Idaho State, not bad on this front. Montana, they really do leave a lot to be desired, but Montana has a little bit of a leg up on the rebounding front. They're about 128th in the country with regards to rebound rate, with Lolau okay being able to be more than okay down low. He's been able to give you about 7 rebounds per game. Idaho State, meanwhile, they're more around 169th, with Montana also having Aiden Moody, who's able to be a good takeover scorer, 16.5 points, shoots 39.5% from 3, and in a nip-and-tuck game for this Montana bunch. Their top 5 scorers, every one of them shoots at least 79.7% of the free throw line. I do think that that's key, but that's much more key in like a spread of 5 to 6. Now that we're getting up to 8, I think we've gone a little bit too lofty, and I do think that both of these teams are going to be able to execute on offense. I did set my total at 142.5. I'm looking at the over, and I do think that Idaho State does just enough to hold in there. Set my line at a 6.5. So take the points with Idaho State and the over 889, 890 on the betting board. Eastern Washington, it's road face-off against Sacramento State. Old Sac State is a 8.5 to an 8-point underdog with your total 143 to 144. I did set Eastern Washington as an 8.5 point favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 8 with them. Now for Eastern Washington, they do have some pretty demonstrative home and road splits. They're scoring about 21.5 points fewer per 100 possessions when away from home rather than when they are at home. But they're going up against the Sacramento State team that has been all sorts of ghastly with regards to their defense, really on both sides of things. They're outside the top 300 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis. At home, they allow opponents to shoot 36.6% from three-point range. That's a bottom 50 mark in all of college basketball, and it's not as if they get some just big giant boost from being at home. With regards to their offensive efficiency, they score about 7 points more per 100 possessions at home. They've got Duncan Boom Pels, who's been able to give you about 2.5 assists, 12 points, 7 boards. It's not been too bad on that front, but Eastern Washington, they just come at you with so much size, and so many guys, they're able to shoot it from three-point range, as you've been able to have a guy that stands right around 6'10", and Dane Erikstrup give you 10.5 points, shoots in the mid-30s from three-point range. As a matter of fact, you've got 6 different guys on the roster that are able to give you at least 9.5 points per contest. Really, everyone except for Jake Kyman is able to do a solid job of being able to hit the boards. Lawan Watts gives you about 9.5 points, 5.5 boards. He's shooting 42.5% from three-point range, and out of your top 7 scorers, all but one of them does shoot at least 36% from three-point range, with Erikstrup being the lone exception at 6'10". Cedric Howard gives you 15 points per game. Now, Eastern Washington, if they do have a little bit of kryptonite well outside the top 225 with regards to ball security, they turn the ball over 13 times per contest, but Sacramento State, not a team that's going to rip it away for one, and for two, Sacramento State bottom 25 team with regards to their turnovers on a per possession basis. On offense, you've had Zia Armota be able to supply 11.5 points, shoots about 32% from 3, but for Sacramento State, they are, as a collective, turning the ball over 15 times per game, shooting 31.7% from 3, and they give up the same amount of points per possession at home rather than on the road. Lone saving grace for Sacramento State. This has been a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of rebound rate. Meanwhile, Eastern Washington, they're not too bad on the glass themselves at about 110th. So, circumstance where I did set my line at an 8.5, I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Eastern Washington, and did did set my total at a 142.5 Eastern Washington. Not quite the same team when they're on the road in terms of their offense. So I'm going to be looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it here with Eastern Washington up to 8 with them. 891, 892 on the betting board. Baylor plays us to Texas. Texas is back to being an underdog of between 6.5 and 7 points. Totals between 144.5 and 145.5. Did set my total 145.5. Mostly seeing 145 out there, and that's a take for me on the over. With Texas, they have been a inconsistent defensive team when they've been away from home. They are giving up darn near 20 points more per 100 possessions away from home rather than when they are at home. But I'm going to be willing to take the points because I do think that they can battle Baylor down low. Baylor is a top 40 team in terms of rebound rate, but other than EC, who's been able to give you 11 points, 5.6 rebounds per game, don't have a single guy in the roster. It gives you north of 5.2 boards per contest now for Baylor. They have seen a fall off with their three-point shooting. They're shooting more like 36-37% from distance in conference play. Meanwhile, in non-conference play, they pretty much led all of college basketball, and they still do have their top 6 guys that made at least 1 3 this year, all but one of them shooting at least 37.8% from 3. That would be Ja'Cory Walter, who's able to give you 14.5 points, nearly a steal per contest. But Ray J. Dennis runs some good, efficient offense, 6.5 assists, right around 13.5 points per game. Does turn the ball over 3.5 times per contest, though, and this is a Texas team that does a okay job of being able to generate turnovers. Both of these teams are getting about 7 steals per game, and for Texas, if you do have trepidation with this bunch, they don't necessarily guard the 3 well away from home. At home, opponents shoot just 30.3% from 3 against them. That goes up to 38.7% away from home. And you've got a Baylor unit that they allow opponents to shoot 37% from 3-point range away from home. That goes down to 29.6% when they're at home. And in terms of the points allowed on a per possession basis for this Bears bunch, they are allowing about 18 points fewer per 100 possessions at home rather than away from home. But I do think that the turnovers could be of some significance here. You do have a Baylor team that they're about 126th in all of college basketball. Their regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Meanwhile, for Texas, you've got someone like a Tyrese Hunter, who's able to give you about 4 assists, multiple steals per contest from time to time. He's helping a Texas team that's currently, with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis, 78th in all of college basketball, and been able to get some relatively good production out of Max Abmas. Abmas has been able to supply you with 16 points, just under 5 rebounds per game. He's been able to shoot from 3-point range just below 40% as well, but I mean, with having Brock Cunningham being able to give you some good versatility, 4 boards per contest, Dylan DeShoe has been able to shoot nearly 51.5% from 3, 16.5 points, 5 boards per contest, with also having Abmas and Hunter combining for about 8.5 assists to about 5 turnovers per game. That should allow Texas to be able to hold in there against a Baylor team that has been much better at home, but still is a little bit shaky with their defense. I'm going to be looking at the over set my total 145.5, and I'm going to be willing to take anything of 6 or greater with Texas. This is the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before we hit the extra games. 893, 894. Portland State plays us to Idaho. Idaho is an underdog of 6 to 6.5 points on this game. It is 139 to 139.5. I did set my total at a 142. I'm going to be looking at the over. Both of these teams just have massive warts with their defense. Portland State outside the top 300 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, and just look at this Idaho team and the way that they are not playing defense, and it is not spectacular. Idaho 304th in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, giving up about 9.6 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home. And though Idaho doesn't necessarily have a lot of guys that are going to bat down the hatches and give you a bunch of scoring, I do think that they can exploit a Portland defense that certainly has been all over the place themselves. As for Portland State, it's been a whole is greater than the sum of its parts collective with them on offense. Quinn Danker along with KJ Allen for their respective teams both are leading the way with about 12.5 points per game. And then outside of Danker for Idaho, you've got Julian Mims, who's able to give you about 7 boards, a steal per contest, but really nobody else other than these two guys are able to give you north of 9 points, north of 4 rebounds per game. Idaho well outside the top 250 with regards to their rebound rate, and Portland State leaving a lot to be desired with their rebound rate. Outside of KJ Allen, you don't have a single guy that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Both of these teams have been very rough with regards to rebound rate. You have had Ishmael Habib be able to step up and be able to give this team a little bit of facilitation, 3 assists, 9.5 points for a Portland State team that they only turn the ball over about 11.3 times per contest, and that is big in this case. Both of these teams, they do a nice job of being able to take care of the ball. It hasn't necessarily resulted in the world's greatest shot making. It's Portland State 274th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis. Idaho is 264th, but Idaho is actually averaging about 4.3 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they're away from home, and I do think that that's going to keep them somewhat lively in this case. I do do think that both of these teams have a very similar style of having some rough offense, but not really providing a lot on defense. And you got a Portland State team that's now given up at least 72 points in 4 of their last 5 games. I do think that Idaho is going to be able to get a little bit of offense going, and they themselves give it up at least 76 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So I do think that this is going to be a higher scoring game, and I think that this could be close enough for late game felling. So looking at the over, set my total at 142, and here at the 6.5, going to be willing to take those points with Idaho, made them a 6-point dog. Now let's hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306, 635, 306, 636. Southeast Louisiana is on the road facing up against Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word is a home underdog of between 4 and 5 points here total on this game, between 143 to 143.5. I did set Southeast Louisiana as a 5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Incarnate Word. They just turned the ball over way too much. Bottom 30 team in all of college basketball in terms of ball security, and they go up against the Southeast Louisiana team that at the top, they've got 2 guys I really like, Nick Caldwell, Roger McFarland. Good versatility at combined 30.5 points per contest. McFarland has been able to haul in there about 8.5 rebounds per game, and Caldwell is able to shoot 40% from 3-point range, going up against an Incarnate Word team that is well outside the top 275 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. And for Southeast Louisiana, they do an okay job being able to generate turnovers. They're about league average in all of college basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and they should be able to do a nice job being able to knife the ball inside. Southeast Louisiana, certainly they've got their faults with being 271st in the country with regards to opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, but this Incarnate Word team, they do allow you to be able to hit those twos as well. They're allowing opponents to shoot about 50.8% from inside the arc. That's outside the top 200 in all of college basketball, while Southeast Louisiana, they themselves have been a rough team in terms of giving it up from 3-point range. Southeast Louisiana, 168th in the country in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but for Incarnate Word, you've got to have questions as to who's going to be able to knock down those shots. You've got Joshua Morgan, who's been able to shoot in the high 30s from 3-point range, about 38%. He supplies the team with about 7.5 points per contest. When you've had Alex Anderson in the fold, he's been rock solid, 12 points, with a little bit over 3 assists per contest to help facilitate the offense, but he only shoots about 16% from 3-point range. And as a matter of fact, for Incarnate Word, none of their top 5 scorers shoot above 34.9% from 3. That'll help out the cause of Southeast Louisiana. Bunchhead has been playing at a bottom 75 pace in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but have really gotten it going with their offense, 68 plus points each of their last 5 games. So they have surrendered now at least 75 points in 4 of the last 5. And Incarnate Word, they have given up north of 80 points in 4 of their last 5 games, with the lone exception being 76 points surrendered. So I do think that you're going to be seeing a pair of teams that have been all over the place, have a little bit of a rough performance. So I did set my total at a 141. With Incarnate Word, though, they have been giving up a whole bunch of points. This has been an offense that has scored 72 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. And I do think that Southeast Louisiana is going to be able to hone in a little bit more with their defense. First time around, this was a 76-64 win for Southeast Louisiana, despite Incarnate Word shooting 35.5% from 3 and 100% at the free throw line. So did set my total at 141, looking under of Southeast Louisiana, want to lay up to 4.5 with them. 306-637, 306-638. Northwestern St plays us to Nicholls. Nicholls is a favorite of between 1.5 points to being as low as a pick'em. Total on this game is between 142 and 142.5. Made Nicholls a 3.5 point favorite. We'll take them as a pick'em / a slight favorite. I'm willing to lay up to 3 here with them for Nicholls. They're going to have the best 2 players out there on the floor in Deontay Smith, coupled with Jamal West. These 2 guys have been able to combine for 29.5 points, 14 boards, 5.5 assists. They do turn the ball over 5.5 times per contest, but they also shoot about 36% from 3-point range. Both of these teams have some massive gaping holes with regards to their defense. Northwestern St, well inside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And for Northwestern St, they're not the world's worst 3-point shooting defense. They allow opponents to shoot just 31.4% from 3-point range when they're at home, but where they really have their issues is down low. This Northwestern St team well outside the top 275 in terms of their rebound rate, and for Northwestern St in terms of opponents' 2-point shooting percentage, 334th in all of college basketball, going up against a Nicholls unit that they're more on 234th with this regard, but they allow opponents to shoot just 50.7% from inside the arc on the road. That's actually 53.6% when they're at home. Nicholls well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, but you do have a Northwestern St team that has been having a difficult time just being able to have functional offense all season long in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. This Northwestern St team is just 300th in the country, and they actually average 2.1 points fewer per 100 possessions when they're at home. They've been relying too much on Cliff Davis, who's been able to give the team about 14 points, shoots 40% from 3-point range, but He is the only out of their top 7 scorers this season to shoot above 30% from three-point range. Northwestern St also turns the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, and their lone player averaging north of 5 rebounds per game is Jamison Epps, and we have not seen him since mid-December. I do think that Nicholls going to be able to control things down low. I do think that this is going to be a sloppy game with regards to turnovers, but this Nicholls team has been able to get to 85 points throughout their last 4 games. You've got a Northwestern St team that has been getting gashed quite a bit recently, giving up at least 72 points in each of their last 3 contests. So I do think that this is a good spot for Nicholls. I did set them as a 3.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them on this line. And I did set my total at a 143.5. Right now, seeing mostly 142s, and I do think that this could be close enough for late game felling, so looking at the over, and I'm going to be willing to take Nicholls as a pick'em / a very, very slight favorite. 306, 639, 306, 640. Coppin St plays to South Carolina State. South Carolina State is laying between 7 and 7.5 points. Draw on this game is 135 to 135.5. Set South Carolina State as a 6.5 point favorite. Here at 7+, I think we've gone a little bit too far with a Coppin State unit that is just ghastly on offense. Bottom 5 team in all of college basketball. In terms of points scored on a per possession basis, they just have not been able to take care of the ball at all. This Coppin State team, 15.5 turnovers per game, but they do have Justin Winston, 14 points, 5.5 boards, 1.2 steals per game, and sadly, he is by far the best offensive player in this game. You don't have anyone for South Carolina State that's registering north of 9 points per game. Now, for South Carolina State, defense honestly hasn't been the world's worst, though they are a bunch that they really do give it up when they're on the road. Overall, with regards to their three-point shooting defense, they're about 170th in all of college basketball in that regard, but for South Carolina State, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis overall, it's night and day what they do at home versus on the road. They're about 206th in all of college basketball in this regard, giving up about 2.5 points more per 100 possessions when they're away from home rather than at home. Meanwhile, with regards to their offense, this team has been very rudderless as well. Not quite Coppin State level bad, but South Carolina State, 305th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, scoring 19 points fewer when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, and that's just because they don't have that one guy to really steady the ship and be able to give them some good, reliable scoring. Meanwhile, for Coppin State, at the very least, you have that with Winston. You've been able to get a little bit more recently as well out of Malik Battle. Battle has been in and out of the fold all season long, but he's back, and he has been able to give the team at least 16 points in 3 out of their last 5 games, shooting 51% from three-point range, while South Carolina State, they're relying upon Michael Teal, giving you 8.4 points per game to really run things for them. Now, down low, they've been able to do a relatively solid job. Davion Everett has been able to give you about 6.5 boards per contest, or it's in there about 7.5 points per game, but he's been a little bit hampered and limited by injuries as well, so that's an issue for a team that they turn the ball over 15 times per game. Both of these teams outside the top 3 in terms of just turnovers on a per possession basis. Now, to the credit of South Carolina State in regulation, they've given up 68 points or fewer in each of their last 5 games. And for Coppin State, this is a legitimate top 225 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're a top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. So they have also given up at least 75 points in 3 of their last 4 games. So good old situation of something's got to give. I really don't see either of these teams approaching 70. I did set my total at 132.5, diving in on the under end in a defensive slog. I want the points here set by line at 6.5, so taking 7+ with Coppin State and the under 306, 641, 306, 642. Morgan State is going to be playing with NC Central. NC Central is a 4-point road favorite. Your total on this game is between 149.5 and 150. Made NC Central the 3-point favorite. So I'm going to be taking a look at the points with Morgan State. Morgan State has been brutal all season long. They're outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, but they've been dealing with injuries all season long. Now they're finally getting healthy. Miles Thompson saw the fold. He probably is going to be for the rest of the season, but Rob Lawson, who has been relatively limited this year, he's been able to supply the team with 8.5 points. And he really takes a load off of Winston Tabbs with the way that he doles out 3.5 assists per game. You also have Cameron Hobbs, who's been able to give you about 3.5 assists, shoots 37% from three-point range. But Tabbs, he is your main man for Morgan State, shoots 36% from 3. You may recall he was at Boston College many years ago where he was a double-figure scorer, and that helps out a Morgan State team that on defense is relatively grody. They are about 286th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but they don't really give it up at home. Opponents at home, they shoot about 31.5% from distance against them, 37.3% in a road or neutral court venue. Meanwhile, for NC Central, they have been able to do a really good job of being able to lock it down from three-point range. NC Central, number 7 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but that's 24.5% when they're at home. That does balloon up to about 32.7% in a roadside neutral court venue, so still relatively solid, but not quite the same. And this is also an NC Central team that they're going to be relying upon being able to generate turnovers. They're a top 100 team in all of college basketball basketball with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Going up against the Morgan State unit, though, that they're in the top 90 with this regard. And for NC Central, they're a team that they also turn the ball over about 12 times per game while being well outside the top 225 in terms of the rebound rate. Emmanuel Izabooner being able to supply the team with about 5.5 rebounds per game. He's the lone guy that gives you 5+ boards. So you do have a trio in Jadarius Harris, Po Boy King, Fred Cleveland. These guys, they combine for about 40.5 points. Cleveland, your main facilitator, with about 5.5 assists per contest with Harris and Cleveland. They both shoot north of 35% for three. King about 34.5% from the outside, but with NC Central really not getting a lot going down low. Morgan State having Alan Amadu be able to supply the team with about 6.5 rebounds per game, and just in general, this Morgan State team being able to improve a bit with their offense. They've gotten past the 70-point plateau in 3 out of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got an NC Central team that's now given up at least 80 in 3 out of their last 5 games. Does make for an interesting circumstance. I did set my total at 149. You've got an NC Central team that is a little bit lower tempo. They both generate a bunch of turnovers, and they do leave a lot of dead possessions as well. So I'm going to be looking at the under. And here at north of 3, going to be willing to take those points with Morgan State. 306-643, 306-644. Maryland Eastern Shore is going to be on the road facing off against Norfolk State. Norfolk State is a favorite of anywhere between 12.5 and 13 points. So on this game, 135 to 135.5. Semi-line at 12.5. 13 is my buy point on Maryland Eastern Shore. This is going to be a low possession game. Norfolk State outside the top 300 with regards to total possessions per game, and Maryland Eastern Shore not by any sort of the imagination a blazer either. And Maryland Eastern Shore, bottom 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but they're going to have the best rebounder in this game. That'd be Troy Hupstead, giving you 13.5 points in half boards, and at 6'7", he does shoot about 34% from three-point range. I like his game, and that's big because Maryland Eastern Shore, they are a bottom 50 team in terms of protecting the ball with 13.5 turnovers per game. 39.5% is what they shoot from the floor, 29.5% from three. Those are both bottom 40 marks in all of college basketball, going against a Norfolk State team that has had their issues in terms of being able to give it up from three-point range, but they do a relatively solid job of being able to generate turnovers. For Norfolk State, they are about 200th in the country with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, while Maryland Eastern Shore has actually been able to shine on that front. Maryland Eastern Shore, 90th in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage, but for Norfolk State, this is a bunch that they're very much looking to generate turnovers. 12th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, and if you look specifically at their home games, they're in the top 6 with this regard, but they don't have anything down low. Jelani Darden, who's been able to give you 7 points, 5 rebounds per game. He is the only guy in the roster that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game, so even though Maryland Eastern Shore, they are not a good rebounding team whatsoever, unlike in a lot of games, they're not going to get lane-based here. Maryland Eastern Shore, about 326th in all of college basketball with regards to rebound rate. Norfolk State, they're more on 258th. Now, you do have a tough light scorer from UNC Wilmington and Jamari Thomas, who's able to lead the way for Norfolk State, about 3.8 assists, 3.8 rebounds, 2 steals, shoots 38.5% from the outside with 17.5 points per game for a Norfolk State team that in a nip and tuck game, they have each of their top 4 scores shooting at least 77.8% the free throw line, but they themselves do turn the ball over 12.5 times per game. Considering how low tempo they are, that's a little bit of an issue, and you've got a Maryland Eastern Shore team that has been able to step up to the plate with their defense. 70 points or fewer surrender in 4 of their last 5 games. Meanwhile, you've got a Norfolk State team that honestly has been pretty good with their offense. 71 plus points scored in 4 of their last 5 games, so it is a little bit of a situation of something's got to give. I do think that the offense is going to be quite muted in this game, so I did set my total 132.5, diving it on the under, and with regards to the spread, I set mine at a 12.5, so here at 13, I'm going to be willing to take those points with the short. 306-645, 306-646. Howard is going to be playing against the Delaware St. Delaware State is a underdog of 4.5 to 5 points, so your total on this game is between 143.5 and 144.5. I did set Howard as a 7-point favorite. Going to be willing to lay the number. Howard well outside the top 225 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Going against a Delaware State team that has been actually quite good with their defense. Top 125 team with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis. Top 100 team in terms of rebound rate, but they get gashed from three-point range. Delaware State allowing opponents to shoot 36.9% from three-point range in a road/neutral venue that is outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. You got a Howard team that has all sorts of versatility. Seth Downs, who we remember was the Ivy League Player of the Year many years ago, back when he was over at Harvard, is in like his 50th year of college basketball. He and Bryce Harris combining for 31 points, about 14 rebounds. They chip in their 4 assists, while Towns shoots 37.5% for 3. Harris 43% for 3. Howard also is a bit careless with the ball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're a bottom 50 team in all of college basketball, and Howard, they're certainly going to be willing to give it up from three-point range as well. About 192nd in all of college basketball in terms of opponent's three-point shooting percentage, and we've got an nice duo in this Delaware St backcourt as well, as you've been able to have Martavius Robinson along with Javon Munoz be able to supply the team with about 31 points per contest. Robinson, 6 boards, shoots 34% from 3. Munoz, he's able to shoot 35.5% from distance, but you've also got a Delaware State team that they do turn the ball over about 14.8 times per game. They do a better job of being able to generate turnovers than this Howard team, though, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Delaware State, a top 75 team in all of college basketball, and it is a number that does a pretty solid job of being able to travel with them, but I do fear that for Delaware State, just their lack of just overall prowess in the backcourt, coupled with the fact that you don't necessarily have a deep rotation. Wesley Oba, he's been able to do a nice job being able to supply to the team with about 7 points per contest, but you legitimately have 3 guys that give you 13 plus points per contest, with also having Dave Wilk Tavares, who's been able to give you 13 points per contest, but outside of that, nobody else gives you north of 7 points per contest. I do think that Howard going to be able to go out there, overwhelm, and Howard, they've been playing much better with their defense as well. 72 points of fear surrendered in each of their last 3 games, so it is a circumstance where I do think that Howard goes out there, gets the job done, set them as a 7-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number, and with Howard's improved defense, I did set my total at 143, so also going to be taking a look at this total under 366.47, 366.48. Texas A&M Commerce is going to be playing with Lamar. Lamar is a favorite of 4.5 points, so on this game is 144.5. I did set Lamar as a 4.5 point favorite, so we're going to be waiting upon a little bit of line movement from what we're seeing across the board. This was a number that a little bit before I was seeing it out of 5, and at the 5, that would be my buy point on the underdog of Commerce. Now, Texas A&M Commerce is getting romped on the glass. They are outside the top 325 in terms of rebound rate. Not as if they're facing up against a Lamar team that has battened down the hatches with this regard. They are a top 175 team with regards to rebound rate, but the Texas A&M Commerce team has also been one of the better teams in all of college basketball at being able to generate turnovers, and they do face off against a Lamar unit that they're going to give it up from 3-point range. Lamar is, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, checking in right around about 219th of the country in a road or neutral court environment. They do allow opponents to shoot 37% from 3-point range, while Texas A&M Commerce, certainly they give up their open looks as well. They allow opponents to shoot 36.3% from 3-point range, but with the Texas A&M Commerce team, in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, they do find themselves in the top 75 in all of college basketball. You've been able to get some relatively good production out of Kalen Williams, who's been able to supply the team with about 16 points per contest. Meanwhile, for Lamar, it is a little bit more of a whole career than some of its parts approach with them. Scary Terry Anderson has been their main man in terms of scoring with 12.3 points per contest, but with Lamar, you've got 4 separate guys that give you between 10.9 and 12.3 points per contest. Anderson has been able to team up quite well with Chris Pryor to be able to give you about 6.3 assists to 3 turnovers per game, though Lamar, 13 turnovers per game. That is a mark that is outside the top 250 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but you do also have a Lamar team that they do shoot about 35% from 3-point range, with BB Knight shooting 37.5% from the outside. He's been able to give the team about 11 points per game, but with this Texas A&M Commerce team, they've been able to get their offense going a little bit more as well. They've been able to get to at least 70 points in now 4 out of their last 5 games, which has been quite encouraging. They've been able to have a few guys step up in the midst of the Jerome Brewer injury, who was able to give you about 13.5 points per contest, with the main one being Tommy Lewis, who's supplying 2.5 assists, 12.5 points per contest, shoots about 36% from 3-point range, and this is a Commerce team that is just vastly different when they're at home rather than when they're away from home. This Texas A&M Commerce team, in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, they are 296th in all of college basketball. Lamar doing quite a bit of a better job on this front, as they're about 160th, but with Lamar, they are giving up about 10.5 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home, and for Commerce, 325th in all of college basketball with regards to points scored on a per possession basis, but that's where that home and road split comes in. They score about 13.7 points more per 100 possessions when they're at home rather than when they are away from home. This is a Commerce team that's going to lose the battle down low, but I do like the way that the backcourt has been able to fortify things. They only turn the ball over about 11.5 times per contest themselves, and in terms of shot blocks, this has been one of your better mid-major teams in all of college basketball, blocking more than 5 shots per contest. So I do think that Commerce going to be able to hold in there at 5 or more. I'm going to be willing to take the points. If this gets down below 4, that would be my buy point on Lamar, and I did set my total at a 144.5, circumstance where I'm going to be willing to take a look at this total over at a 144 or less, and I'm going to be willing to take anything north of 5 here. With Commerce, 306, 649, 306, 650. Houston Christian is the road face off against McNeese. McNeese State, a 27 to a 28 point favorite with a total of 153. Typically, I am a sucker for taking the gob ton of points in a situation like this. I can't do it with Houston Christian. I set my line at 30.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with McNeese. We just saw this matchup a few weeks ago, with Houston Christian on their home floor getting lambasted by north of 40. This team has just been lifeless. They have not been able to get anything going whatsoever. For Houston Christian, they are in the top 25 in all of college basketball. There's a total possessions per game, while being in the bottom 40 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and well outside the top 3 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. There's just not a lot of promise with this team. Now, if there is one thing with McNeese, it is the fact that they do allow opponents to shoot north of 35% from three-point range at home. For some reason, they've been allowing opponents to shoot much better from three-point range at home rather than in a roadside shoot-to-court environment, but really past that, I don't have a lot of concerns with this one. It's a Houston Christian team that has 2 guys on the roster that see consistent minutes, are shooting above 26% from three-point range, as Marcus Green has been able to do a solid job with 13 points. He's shooting darn near 40% from three-point range, and Dom Capriati has been able to do the same. Past that, there's really nothing with regards to this team. Now, Houston Christian does allow opponents to shoot 31% from three-point range away from home, but for McNeese, they could just knife the ball inside. You've got Christian Schulmate, who's done a nice job supplying the team with 9.5 rebounds, 12 plus points per contest. Shahada Wells does a really nice job of being able to get to the rim, 17 points per game. And McNeese, one of the wisest teams in all of college basketball, a top 40 team in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. They themselves shoot about 39% from three-point range. And the one thing I was able to find with Houston Christian was the fact that they were guarding the three ball away from home. Well, at home, they allowed this McNeese team to go 15 out of 32 from three-point range. I think they should do a little bit better than that, and that's a big reason why I do like this total under. I set my total at 152.5, so here at the 153, I'm going to be diving in on the under, as I don't think that the shooting is going to be quite as hot as we saw the last time around, but this Houston Christian team, it's just rough for them. You do have Michael Irabaje, along with Bonke Mareng, who have been able to combine for about 15 rebounds per game, but even with those 2 guys firing all cylinders, McNeese is going to be able to win this battle on the glass very handily. McNeese, in terms of their rebound rate, is about 115th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, you got a Houston Christian team as 286th. So, circumstance where set my line at 30.5. I think we get a line basing. I'm going to be willing to lay with McNeese, and set my total 152.5 here at the 153. Going to be diving in on the under. 3 at 6, 651, 3 at 6, 652. It is New Orleans, and they're on the road. They're facing off against Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and Corpus Christi, a sizable favorite between 14 to 15 points. Totals between 154.5 and 155.5. Did set my total at 150. I'm going to be diving in on the under with Corpus Christi. This team has been really hanging their hat on defense. They're a top 80 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and for Corpus Christi, what has been winning out for this team has been both generating turnovers and being above the glass. This is a top 75 team with regards to their rebound rate, as they've got a pair of guys, Gary Clark along with Dane Prim, who have been able to combine for about 14 rebounds per game. With Clark, he's really the lone guy on the roster that gives you north of 10.7 points per contest, supplying the team with 13 points per game, and that's part of the reason why I have trepidation laying this summer. This Corpus Christi team is only shooting about 30.7% from three-point range. That's outside the top 300 in all of college basketball. They do turn the ball over as well, about 12 times per contest. So while they do a nice job generating turnovers, they do give it away a little bit as well. Now, it's a New Orleans team that has been terrible with their defense. Outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Now checking in 317th in all of college basketball with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage, strangely allowing a little bit of a lower percentage when they're away from home rather than when they are at home, but that has been a bit of an issue. And then you've got on this New Orleans team a guy in Jordan Johnson who's been able to do a nice job supplying the team with 21.5 points, 4 assists, does shoot about 34.5% from three-point range, and it's a New Orleans team that's going to get just absolutely plowed on the glass or well outside the top 225 with regards to rebound rate, but do have a pair of guys in Javon Vincent, a couple of Tyson Jackson, who have been able to give you about 11.5 rebounds per game for New Orleans. They do turn the ball over about 12 times per contest, but they play a little bit more up-tempo than this A&M Corpus Christi team. Now, defense has just been all over the place for New Orleans. They have given up at least 77 points each of their last 4 games, but the offense is still there for this unit. They have been able to get to at least 72 points in 3 of their last 4 games. They're going up against a Corpus Christi team that they have been able to generate quite a bit of offense as well, at least 75 points in 4 of their last 5 games, but I do think that things are going to be bogged down a little bit more because this is a New Orleans offense that is a little bit one-dimensional. I do think that there's going to be quite a few turnovers in this game, leading to some dead possessions, and you look at what happened the first time around, you have to go back to January. New Orleans actually won that game by a count of 83-80. That was a game where they shot 9 of 16 from three-point range. They lost a turnover battle 14-12. They lost a rebound battle, but they were able to pull it off because Johnson scored 40 points. I just don't see a replay of that, but at the same time, I just think that with Corpus Christi, they've been one of your better cover teams in all of college basketball, but numbers are starting to get a little bit too high on them. I did set my line at 14, so Now that we're getting to 15, I'm going to be willing to take the points with New Orleans. And with regards to the total, did set mine more around a 150. I do think that things get a little bit more bogged down with a Corpus Christi team that's really been able to lock down on defense. So look at the under, and I'm going to be willing to take the points with New Orleans. 306, 653, 306, 654. It is Prairie View, and they play host to Jackson State. Jackson State, a 2.5 to a 3-point road favorite. Your total on this game between 143 and 143.5 with Jackson State. I did set them as a underdog of 2.5 points. So I'm going to be looking at Prairie View outright on the money line. The Jackson State team has really been going through quite a few struggles, and they look to be a very formidable team at the beginning part of the season after they got that win against Missouri, and turns out Missouri just absolutely stinks this season. And for Jackson State, they do have a top flight scorer in Ken Evans, who's certainly going to be the best scorer in this game. 18 points, 5 boards, shoots about 39.5% from three-point range. But for Jackson State, them being outside the top 250 with regards to turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, that does have to have you worried against a Prairie View team that is in the top 10 nationally with regards to turnovers force on a per possession basis. And for Prairie View, they are one of those teams that they gamble for turnovers, so as a result, they do leave themselves open from three-point range. Opponents are shooting 38.5% from distance against them, but you've got a Jackson State team as well outside the top 200 with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, and they have a big home and road split with regards to their three-point shooting defense. They allow opponents at home to shoot just 22.3% from three against them, 36.8% when they're away from home. They've been able to get quite a bit of help around Ken Evans with being able to have Chase Adams be able to supply 4.5 assists per game. He shoots about 32% from three-point range, and then you've got Jordan O'Neal, who's able to give you 6 rebounds per game. That should be able to allow Jackson State to be able to win the battle down low. Prairie View outside of the top 350 with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, it's a Jackson State team that, while they do have their struggles on the glass, they certainly are a much better team on that front, as they're checking in right around about 191st in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. But with Jackson State, you just have a fear that this team is a little bit too top heavy to be able to pull it off as well. They've been able to get Keontae Cornelius to be able to give you some good production at about 38.5% three-point shooting he was missing throughout part of the season. He's been able to give you about 7 points per contest, but now they've been without Chase Adams, their main point guard, for quite some time, and that has led to a little bit of a fall for this Jackson State team. We have noticed that the offense just has not been itself. They have scored fewer than 70 points in regulation in each of their last 3 games. Meanwhile, it's a Prairie View unit that they are currently riding a 5-game losing streak, and they've given up at least 72 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Lone exception is when they face off against Mississippi Valley State, but I do think that with Brandon Miles being able to give you about 9 rebounds per game and a block per contest, that'll be able to help them out down low. And then I like what Charles Smith and Javante Hopkins providing in the backcourt. They combined for about 28 points per contest with Smith. He's now shooting 36% from three-point range for Prairie View. Offense has been sporadic and all over the place, but I do think that in a game where it's going to be quite sloppy, there's going to be quite a few turnovers, but there's going to be a lot of tempo, as Prairie View is a top 75 team with regards to possessions per game, that they do find a way to be able to pull it off in a game where I do think that this comes down to late game fouling and Prairie View being able to get the job done with them acting up a little bit more on defense, while you do have a Jackson State team that has given up 80 plus in each of their last 2 games. So did sum a total 146.5, looking at the over, and I like Prairie View outright on the money line, 306.655, 306.656. It is Texas Southern. They play us Alcorn St. Alcorn St is a underdog of 4 to 4.5 points. Total on this game is 139, and with Alcorn St, I did set them as an underdog of 5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay the 4 to 4.5 here with Texas Southern. Texas Southern has been really rough all season long if you look at the metrics, but then in conference has been just so different than them out of conference. PJ Henry, Jonathan Cisse, these 2 guys are combined for about 27 points per game. You've been able to have Henry be able to supply you with about 2 steals per contest, and overall Texas Southern is now shooting about 31% from three-point range. Now, if you look at points allowed and points scored on a per possession basis, for Texas Southern, they clearly are much more of a defense-oriented team. 91st in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. In terms of points scored, 318th, but for Texas Southern, they are generating about 8.7 points more per 100 possessions at home rather than in a road or neutral court environment. And for Texas Southern, they've done a nice job of being able to find a way by committee of doing all this, because they don't have a single guy in the roster that gives you north of 4.5 rebounds per game. Meanwhile, you've got an Alcorn State team that is going to have that dominant player down low. That means Jeremiah Kendall has been able to give you 16 points, 6.8 rebounds per game. This for an Alcorn State team that, with regards to the rebound rate, they are checking in right in the neighborhood, about 161st in all of college basketball. Texas Southern just 225th, and for Alcorn State, they've really given it up from three-point range outside the top three with that regard. Well, they just haven't been able to get Jalen Hawkins going, someone who I really liked back when he was over at Norfolk State and Morehead State in past years. He's only been able to give you about 7 points per contest, shooting about 30% from three-point range. Jeremiah Gambrell has been able to shoot 43% from the outside, and to the credit of Alcorn State, they are only turning the ball over about 11.5 times per contest for their rather up-tempo style. That's relatively impressive, but I do think that they are going to be locked down from three-point range by a Texas Southern team that's been able to really ascend with that regard. They're up to the top 140 with regards to opponents' three-point shooting percentage. Not a team that's necessarily going to generate a ton of turnovers, but for this Texas Southern team, they've been able to work on that a little bit, and I do think that with just how strong they are with regards to their overall interior defense and the way that they've really been able to take the air out of the ball, is for Texas Southern, the last time they gave up north of 70 points in a game, you have to go all the way back to December 12th, and for that matter, they have only given up 70 points in regulation since their Florida A&M game. That was one that went to overtime. They've only done so twice since the turn of the calendar. I do think that Texas Southern going to be able to do a quality job in this spot against an Alcorn State team that certainly has been getting gashed and giving up the points. Alcorn State, they have been a little bit better with their defense recently, and they themselves have gone to at least 72 points so far their last 5 games, but with Alcorn State just having the bad defensive metrics that they do, and me thinking this game goes to late game following, I did set my line at 5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Texas Southern, and did set my total 142.5. Also going to be taking a look at this total over 306.657, 306.658. It is Grambling. They play out to Bethune-Cookman. Bethune-Cookman is an underdog of 5.5 points. Total this game is 135. I did set Cookman as a 4-point underdog, so here at the 5.5, I'm going to be willing to take those points. Bethune-Cookman is a top 20 team in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, going up against a Grambling unit that just has not been able to get it going with their offense. They're turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest now. They have started to shoot it better from three-point range. They're now shooting in that neighborhood about 33% from the outside, and for Grambling, what was really the bread and butter last year was being one of the most tough and tenacious defenses in college basketball, and they are significantly better at home rather than on the road. They are giving up about 18 points fewer when they are at home rather than in a road/court venue, but they're still outside the top 200 with this regard, and they do go up against a Bethune-Cookman team that certainly the three-point shooting percentage is leaving a lot to be desired, and it's a big reason why they're just 288th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis and scoring 13.6 points fewer per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. But that said, you've got a trio of guys, Zion Herman, Jacoby Heedy, along with Deshaun Dyson, who have been able to combine for about 45 points per contest. Heedy is really the only of these guys that shoots about 32.5% from the outside, and the team does turn the ball over 14 times themselves, but Derek Carter-Hollinger, still shooting 39% from three. He's been able to give the team 9 points, 4.5 boards, just a little bit of a 6'6" combo player, going up against a Grambling team that, while they do have a leg up on the glass, they're not the same rebounding team that they were a season ago. Grambling, 294th in all of college basketball with regards to their rebound rate. Bethune-Cookman, they're 299th, so they actually do a better job of being able to match up than I think a lot of people would suspect. And for this Grambling unit, it has been a case where they've been able to get quite a bit more out of Michael Morton, who's been able to give you about 11 points, 2.5 assists per contest, and now you've got a 38% three-point shooter in Antoine Burnett, who's been able to give you 10 points after he was out of the fold to begin the season. But I do think that with the way that Bethune-Cookman is able to generate turnovers and the way that Grambling just has been so bad with their three-point shooting at home, it's rather startling. They're shooting 28% from distance at home compared to north of 34% in a road/court venue. That'll keep Bethune-Cookman lively in this one, because one of their main kryptonites is the fact that this Bethune-Cookman team, one of the worst teams in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting defense, allowing opponents to shoot about 34.6% from three, 235th in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, Grambling, they allow you to shoot from three-point range about 35%. That's 254th in the country, but that does go down to sub 30% when they're at home. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a tough day for offense, but I do think we went just a little bit too low, and I do think that we get some late game fouling. Semi-total 138, so I'm going to be looking at the over. And with Bethune-Cookman, made them a 4-point dog, so we'll take the 5.5 with them. 306.659, 306.660. It is Southern, and they're going to be playing as Florida A&M. A&M is a 10.5 to an 11.5 point underdog with your total 136.5 to 138. I did set Florida A&M as an underdog of 11 points. between 10.5 and 11. I would rather take 11.5 rather than lay 10.5. And the big reason why is that the Southern team, though they have been a top 20 team in all of college basketball in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis when specifically at home, they've been dealing with quite a few injuries and they're missing quite a few pieces. Their top scorer, Tayron Joseph, has been out of the fold for nearly a month. He was supplying the team with about 20.5 points per contest, so now as a result, they've been looking a lot more to their point guard in Dejani Diomasi, who's been able to give you 5.5 assists, 9.5 points per game to generate more of the offense for a team that shoots 32% from 3, 67% of the free throw line, and turns the ball over about 14 times per game. Now, with Southern, they're also a top 30 team with regards to turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going against an A&M team that they do turn the ball over 15 times per game. While Jalen Spear has been able to really elevate this offense in terms of points scored per one-arm possessions when he's on the floor versus off the floor, it's nearly a 16 points per one-arm possession sway. He does turn the ball over north of 4 times per contest. Among qualifying D1 players, he actually leads all of college basketball with regards to turnovers per game, but he supplies you with about 15.5 points, does shoot about 40% from three-point range as well, and as a collective, for A&M, they're shooting 35% from three, with each of their top 2 scorers shooting north of 40% from three, as you've been able to get 42.5% shooting from distance at about 13.5 points, 5 boards out of Keith Lamar. They do go up against also a unit in Southern that they are very good at guarding the 3 when they're at home, but if you look at them overall, it is a relatively brutal. For Southern, in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting percentage, they are checking in 102nd in all of college basketball, 35.8% away from home, 25.2% at home. So big giant home and road split there, and for Florida A&M, they are well outside the top tier with regards to points allowed on a per possession basis, allowing opponents to shoot 36.5% from distance when they are away from home. And other than Lamar, they don't really have anyone else that gives you north of 4 rebounds per game, while Southern, they really are outside the top 275 with regards to their rebound rate as well, having Derek Tazino be the lone guy giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. So I do think that with Florida A&M, it's much more advantageous to take the 11.5 rather than lay the 10.5, with Southern just being without their top scorer in Joseph. And I did set my total at 141 for Florida A&M. I do think that they're going to be able to find a few cracks through the Southern defense, and they themselves are going to be giving it up. So looking at the over and looking at the points with Florida A&M. Now we head to the Atlantic Sun Conference Tournament. 306-661, 306-662. It is Florida Gulf Coast playing against Queens. Queens NC, a 3.5 to a 4-point underdog. Total on this game is 154. I did set Queens as an underdog of 4 points. At 3.5, that's a max I'm willing to lay with Florida Gulf Coast, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. I do think that these sorts of games do favor the team that plays a little bit more defense, and Florida Gulf Coast, while they do allow a lot of threes, they are outside the top 3 with regards to opponents' 3-point shooting percentage. I do think that the rebounding is going to be able to win out, as you've got Zach Anderson, who's been able to give the team 13 plus points, 5 plus boards per contest for Florida Gulf Coast. This team is in the top 130 with regards to their rebound rate. Meanwhile, you've got a Queens NC team that just has not been able to find a way to be effective on the glass. 280th in the country. They actually have a better rebound rate, though, in a road or neutral court environment rather than at home. And for Queens, you certainly are going to have a trio of guys that are going to be able to keep this team lively in this game, as B.J. McLaurin, A.J. McKee, along with Denton Aubrey. These have been your main 3 scorers. McKee and Aubrey, they combine for about 36 points per contest. Aubrey chips in their 6 boards, 3.5 assists, shoots 35% from 3. And McLaurin, he shoots 35% from distance. And under the radar, you've got a nice sharpshooter in Chris Ashby, who's been able to give you darn near 10 points, shoots 39.5% from distance, but that does fall to about 32.5% from 3-point range in a road or neutral court venue. And this has been a Queens team that has not been able to generate the same amount of offense when they've been on the road rather than at home. They shoot 35.8% from 3-point range at home. When away from home, they shoot only about 31% from distance, while Florida Gulf Coast, they actually shoot better from 3-point range away from home rather than at home as well. So that's been a little bit strange to take a look at, but for Florida Gulf Coast, but I think it's going to be a big X factor for them, is that Isaiah Thompson finally looks like he's healthy for the first time all season long. 13 plus points in 4 of the team's last 5 games. He's missed like 8 or 9 games already this season, and he's just been off and on injured. That's why he's only shooting for the season about 36.5% from 3, and actually only shoots about 29.7% from distance at home, but he's been looking better for the team. Keyshawn Kellman is able to give you a little bit over a block, 7 rebounds per game, and it's going to be a little bit of a tempo war. First time these two teams played, Florida Gulf Coast on their home floor, they won 90-81. That was about 9 or so days ago, and in that game for Florida Gulf Coast, they shot 9-22 from 3, while Queens shot 11-29 from 3, and Queens is actually the better 3-point shooting defense in this scenario. Queens NC is allowing opponents to shoot from 3-point range in that neighborhood of about 34.2% from 3, though that does elevate to about 35.8% from 3-point range when they're at home. At Florida Gulf Coast, as I alluded to, 291st in all of college basketball in this regard, but I do think that for Queens, they might get a little bit sloppy with the ball. This has been a team that has been turning the ball over north of 12 times per contest for, of course, not necessarily a team that's going to generate a whole bunch of turnovers, but I do think that because they win from within, because I think that Queens NC is going to have a lot of one-and-done possessions, that's going to keep this game a little bit lower scoring, semi-total 152, so I'm looking at the under, and with 4 to go, of course, 1 to lay up to 3.5 with them, not a half a point more, and we wrap things up with 3 at 6-6-43, 3 at 6-6-44. It is Kennesaw State. We give our to Lane Kiffin, go Owls. They play us to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is an underdog of 3 to 3.5 points, seeing a straight 4 out there as well. Total on this game is 147.5, 1 to lay up to 4 with Kennesaw State. I did set them as a 4.5 point favorite. This Kennesaw State unit has been absolutely gunning it. Top 10 team in all of college basketball with regards to total possessions per game. Jacksonville outside the top 250, and under the tutelage of Mr. Mincy, their head coach, this Jacksonville team, they were playing a lot of good, tough, tenacious defense in year number 1, and just towards the beginning part of the season, they had really had that defense leave them, but now that Bryce Workman is back in the fold and has been able to do a nice job down low as he provides the team with 11.5 points, 7.5 rebounds per game. This defensive effort has been able to return for Jacksonville, but they have some very big home and road splits. As for Jacksonville, they have only allowed north of 70 points twice in their last 8 games, but pretty much all their success it has come at home as they allow opponents to shoot from three-point range north of 38% away from home. This is sub 29% when they're at home, and for Jacksonville, in terms of overall points allowed on a per possession basis, this team is clocking in 266th in all of college basketball, allowing 19.4 points more per 100 possessions when they leave home rather than when they are at home. Now, Kennesaw State well outside the top 225 in terms of opponents' three-point shooting percentage as well, 291st in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but I do think that they're going to be able to exploit this soft perimeter defense with having a pair of guys in Tyrell Burton along Simeon Cottle be able to supply a combined about 32 points per game. You've also got Devin Robinson, who's able to give you 7 boards per contest. So Jacksonville, they do have the upper hand with regards to the rebound rate, but this Kennesaw team, I do think that they're going to be able to do a relatively solid and sturdy job. And last time these two teams faced off, that was on Kennesaw's home floor about 2 to 3 weeks ago, February 14th. Kennesaw won that game 66-61, and these are all on true home floors with regards to the ASUN tournament. And in that game, Kennesaw won despite shooting just 4 of 21 from three-point range. I don't think that we're going to see quite a repeat of that, but Devin Robinson was able to win the battle down low. That allowed Kennesaw State to be able to win that rebound battle. You do have a pair of guys in Josiah Boom Boom Powell along with Robert McCray to help out in the Jacksonville backcourt with McCray leading the way with 17 points. He's able to give out 3 assists per contest, and Mr. Boom Boom Powell has been able to chip in there 9.5 points, shoots 32% from three-point range. But I do think the Kennesaw State, with them being on their home floor, with them being just a little bit better defensive team at home, at Jacksonville having their issues just all across the board on offense outside the top 250 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis, and dealing with that Mark Zyblack injury, that allowed Kennesaw State on their own floor to get it done. Did somebody total 146.5. I do think that Jacksonville is going to be able to find a way to be able to slow this game down. I'm looking at the under, and I'm willing to lay with Kennesaw, and that'll wrap things up for the Monday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of 2 ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter /X timeline at @GNN_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, maybe it does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And from there, you're able to fire whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. And a big thanks once again to Nick Lorensen of Major Madness for joining me in my segment, coming at you guys every single day throughout the college basketball season. That means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.